My boss, Mr. Raymond Cole, was the kind of man people noticed the moment he entered a room. He wasn't loud or overbearing, quite the opposite. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that made people instinctively pay attention to him. He had a reputation for being sharp, decisive, and, if the rumors were to be believed, relentless when he wanted something. For the first year, our relationship was strictly professional. I scheduled his meetings, prepared his reports, and made sure everything in his day ran seamlessly. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it was more a faint curl of the lips than a genuine beam. But one afternoon, as I handed him a file, he looked at me a moment too long. It wasn't inappropriate, at least not outwardly, but it felt different. Something in his eyes shifted, as though he had just realized something about me, something that changed the way he saw me. I remember feeling a twinge of unease, though I brushed it aside. The change was subtle at first. He began asking me to stay late to help with urgent projects. Our conversations stretched beyond work topics. He started remembering small details about me, my favorite tea, the book I was reading, the music I listened to while typing. At first, I told myself he was just being a good boss, taking an interest in his employees. But as the weeks went on, there was no denying it. His attention was narrowing in on me. One rainy Thursday evening, after most of the staff had left, he asked me to join him in the conference room. The glass walls reflected the dim light of the city, and the rain streaked the windows in slow, uneven trails. He closed the folder in front of him and leaned back, watching me in silence for a moment. Then he said, "You know, you're more than just an assistant to me." The words hung in the air like a fragile thread. My heartbeat picked up. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my voice caught in my throat. He went on, speaking calmly, almost gently. "I admire your work ethic, and I've noticed you in ways I probably shouldn't." There it was, clear as day. The desire he had hinted at before was now out in the open. My stomach tightened. A part of me wanted to leave the room immediately, to avoid whatever was about to happen next. Another part of me, one I'm not proud of, felt an odd mix of flattery and curiosity. I had worked so hard to earn his respect, and now I was staring at the possibility of it turning into something else entirely, something dangerous. I tried to deflect. "I'm here to do my job, Mr. Cole." "Raymond," he corrected, his voice firm but not unkind. "Call me Raymond." I didn't. I gathered my things and left that night without another word. But his admission followed me home like a shadow. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as I replayed every interaction we'd had in the past few months. I told myself I wouldn't let this change anything, that I'd keep things professional. But it was too late. Once someone draws a line in the sand, you can't unsee it. The next week, he was careful. No comments, no lingering stares. It was almost as if that conversation had never happened. But then, one evening, he asked me to accompany him to a business dinner. It wasn't unusual for me to attend these events to take notes or manage scheduling, so I agreed. The restaurant was elegant, with dim lighting and polished marble floors. Over the course of the night, I realized the dinner wasn't really about business. He asked about my childhood, my dreams, my regrets. He listened with an intensity that made me feel exposed. By the time the driver dropped me off at my apartment, I was unsettled. Not because he had said anything inappropriate, but because I could feel myself starting to let my guard down. That night, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker, and asked myself the question I had been avoiding. Was I drawn to him? The truth I didn't want to admit was yes. Weeks passed, and the tension grew, silent but undeniable. He began trusting me with high-level projects, giving me a taste of influence I had never experienced before. My career was accelerating under his guidance, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was because of my abilities, or because of what he wanted from me. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was in control. Then came the night that would haunt me forever. It was late, past midnight, and we were still in the office, finalizing a presentation for a major client. The building was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Raymond stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. Without turning, he said quietly, "You know what I want from you. I froze. The words were not a question. They were a statement, as if he already knew my answer. My pulse pounded in my ears. I had a choice to make in that moment. I could walk away, keep my boundaries intact, and protect everything I had worked for. Or I could step into something uncertain, something that might consume me. I wish I could tell you I made the wise choice. But I didn't. I stayed. What happened next was not scandalous in the way most people would imagine. We didn't cross any explicit physical boundaries that night. Instead, we crossed something far more insidious, emotional boundaries that once broken could never be repaired. He told me things he had never told anyone. I found myself confessing parts of my life I had kept hidden for years. It felt intoxicating, as though we had stepped into our own private world. But the very next day, I realized what I had done. The dynamic between us had shifted irreversibly. Every conversation, every decision at work was now colored by what had passed between us. I could no longer tell if my successes were earned or given. And deep down, I knew he held a certain power over me, not because of his position, but because I had allowed him into a part of my life I never should have shared. Over the months that followed, I watched myself change. I became more cautious, more guarded with everyone else, but with him, I was reckless. I ignored opportunities to transfer departments. I justified his favoritism, telling myself I deserved it. I even began distancing myself from friends who questioned the nature of our relationship. The breaking point came one afternoon during a meeting with the executive board. A project I had poured my heart into was credited to him entirely. No mention of my role, no acknowledgement of my work. When I confronted him later, he simply said, "You know I value you. Isn't that enough?" It wasn't. And in that moment, the spell broke. I saw our connection for what it was, not a romance, not even a friendship, but a careful manipulation wrapped in charm and opportunity. I resigned a week later. He didn't try to stop me. There was no grand gesture, no apology, just a short email wishing me luck in my future endeavors. It was as if everything between us had been a business transaction from the start. That was 2 years ago, and yet I still carry the weight of that decision. I still wonder if my career could have flourished without the shadow of his influence. I still think about how easily I blurred the line between personal and professional, and how hard it is to unblur it once you do. People sometimes ask me why I left such a promising position. I tell them the truth, or at least part of it. My boss made his desire clear, and what I did next still haunts me. Because it wasn't just about him, it was about me. About the part of myself that wanted to be seen, wanted to be valued, even at the cost of my own boundaries.